Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I bring you compilations from seasons 6, 7, and 8 into a package called the Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls. These are made up of 4 or more podcast clips from my seasons, and this is episode 54. And the title of this episode is Out of Touch? Right, why transforming on-chain compute into real-world tangible assets is not such a remote and distant possibility. This podcast draws entirely upon 4 interviews from season 8, and mostly three of the podcasts are in May of 2025 from season 8, and let's get into who I interviewed. First podcast, the first clip, comes from my conversation with Altan Tutar. Altan is the co-founder and CEO of MoreMarkets. We talked about how to transform idle tokens into productive assets. Second, my conversation with Nikolay Filichkin. Nikolay is the co-founder and chief business officer at Compute Labs. We talked about how to transform access to compute by creating GPU financial assets. A couple months before my conversations with Altan and Nikolay, and then also Leo at the end, was my third conversation with Kony. Kony is the CEO and co-founder of GAIB, all in caps. GAIB. We talked about tokenizing GPUs and their yields to create a new asset class for AI and compute. And last but not least, as I mentioned, Leo Fan Xiong, co-founder of Cysic. We talked about transforming real-world compute into on-chain assets through mining hardware tokenization. They're all wonderful, in-depth conversations. They cover a lot of AI concepts and RWA tokenization concepts and really cool stuff. So make sure you check those out. If you are interested in listening to the full podcast, all my podcasts are available on the Crypto Hipster channel. And it's on YouTube, on Spotify, on anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. This is episode 54, and we're going all the way to 67. And I hope to complete that by the end of March. Episode 54, entitled Out of Touch? Why transforming on-chain compute into real-world tangible assets is not such a remote and distant possibility. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you very soon for episode 55. Thank you. You're creating a vertically integrated system that helps to build resilient ecosystems. So I want to understand what the vertical integrated system is, how it works, and then I'll have a follow-up.
Yeah, so if you look at, this is a trend I'm seeing in crypto, and I had a talk about this in South Korea. There was a conference there. And like Google and Amazon, when they started, they had one part of, they were just building one product, right? Google was just only search, Amazon was only just like bookstore. And eventually, to deliver almost a better experience, they started to own the stack, right? So if you look at Apple, for example, they started with the Intel chips for their laptops, and then they now doing their own chips, which is M1s, M2s that they produce. And I've started to see this with crypto too, in a sense. Like, for example, Hyperliquid, that's very it's one of the most successful applications of this cycle, which is it's a perpdex on chain, and they own their L1, right? So they have their own L1. They designed L1 just specifically for perpdex. Now, if we go to obviously MoreMarkets case, like we're designing everything starting from the front end and eventually the back end to make sure that for dormant assets to be active. So what do, right? We have a front end that's simple. That's like a Revolut experience. We go down the stack. We built our own smart contracts that are, it's not ours, but we took inspiration from open source projects. We use something called Boring Vault from Veda. They're one of the biggest sort of money managers in Ethereum. They hold like $3 billion of assets. So we took that and basically made it a bit more multi-chain. So you can now deploy those vaults in Suya and Aptos if you really want to, near and Solana where we think the best yields are. And then we have our own we don't have our own MPC yet, just because we believe Near's MPC is pretty good. We trust the Near team that they built a really good L1, and I think they've done a really good job with the MPC too. And eventually, owning the lending market, right? So there's a lending markets. We provide the collateral as, let's say, XRP, and then pull out the stable coin against it. Eventually, we think there's like a better way to do, next generation lending just for these assets that I mentioned, right? Bitcoin, maybe it's Litecoin, for example, that I did not mention, that it's a big asset too. So that's what I talk about in verticalized systems, is to, as you start, owning the user, you can just go down the stack and make sure that the user gets the best experience with the products that you offer. So we're seeing this more in crypto, and I think it's going to get more and more as crypto becomes more like traditional venture, really, right? I think it starts to be, people start to pay more attention to revenue now, which is great. And then you basically you'll see more of these companies building multiple things in the stack and making sure that the users are happy.
Great. So your definition of resilient, like my definition of resilient ecosystem is something that doesn't like, just go away, right? I mean,
yeah.
But your definition of resilient ecosystems is what do you envision as a resilient ecosystem?
So for us, or for anybody?
For anybody, your view of what that means.
Yeah, so resilient ecosystem, well, depends. If you talk about the L1s, it is like going through these back and forths of these cycles and making sure that builders don't leave. But for us, resilient is obviously something decentralized, right? Like if you make it decentralized with smart contracts, with the decentralized MPC, that's resilient, right? Like for that system to fail, there needs to be so many things in the system that needs to be canceled, and that needs to be failing at the same time. So that's my thing of resilience. For example, if you want to, if somebody attacks our, any protocol, they need to think about it very, very hard to be able to, corrupt the network, which crypto is very good at, right? Like resiliency in terms of like, good luck finding all these validators and making sure that they disagree all the time. That's just not going to happen. And for MPC, for example, like it's finding those KYB institutions and going against them is pretty hard. But for me, a resilient ecosystem means if something happens, we have enough decentralization and enough other operations that can save the system. That's for us, obviously. But for L1s, for example, if you're covering Solana or something, I think ecosystem might mean something else. Like builders are motivated, even though something happens in the ecosystem, right? They can still keep building. I think Solana did that really well last cycle. So I think that's there's a nuanced difference between like human resilience versus like, I guess, system and technical resilience.
You said the magic words that everybody's scared of. You said self-governing AI.
Yeah.
Right? That sounds like Armageddon.
I could see that.
What do you do in case of Armageddon? We will need more compute, or
that's a really interesting question. It's like, do we fight fire with fire? I don't know. Man, let's just turn some switches off. I don't know. I have no idea what to tell you. I anticipate that maybe quantum computing would then come in place and be more of a security layer or to a threat of AGI. I have no idea. I don't even know if AGI is a threat. But I know we're afraid of it. I'm not sure. I really don't know.
Yeah, that's the question that people should explore. Like, should we be afraid of AI? we shouldn't, right? Or I mean, finance. I mean, finance is meeting tech in this AI revolution. How do you see that? How do you see it playing out long term, where finance meets tech in this revolution?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And the way I think about it is that in the last 20, 30 years, and honestly even beyond that, technology has been this growing industry where if we see the top of the global market, technology is the leading growing industry where most of the businesses you'll see on the S&P 500 are going to be technology based, and that's well understood, and so much of that has come from investments into tech. So that's just to demonstrate that, hey, technology needs finance in the first place. There needs to be good capital, good investments, getting into more and more technology so that we as a global population can prosper and we'll have new cool things. We have ChatGPT, now we have Gemini, and now we'll have like even cooler products because of these investments going into tech. I see it only increasing, and that's why at Compute Labs we want to facilitate the investments into compute-based products and into GPUs and helping these AI companies grow their businesses, grow their products, give them additional compute capacity so that we just have overall more cooler things to look forward to.
Sounds good. That sounds interesting. So, um, I want to talk about greater participation across all sectors. So, how can we get that greater participation across all sectors in a multi-chain AI empowered world?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. And I also just like kind of summarize that as how do we just get more people talking about this? How do we get more usability or how do we get more volume into this market? And I think my answer is pretty consistent. If you asked me this question 3 years ago, I think I would answer the same way. For me, it's just user experience. I think there's value. Uh, I think there are so many projects in Web3 that are just so valuable. But the fundamental issue that bridges value and obtaining customers or obtaining uh, interest from the market is just the ability to use it. And that is a user experience issue because if there is a really good product out there, but it's just really clunky and it's a pain in the ass to actually like go through it, it's not gonna really bring volumes or it's not gonna bring attention. We're such fickle people with our attention. Like I have Instagram Reels giving me some new dopamine rush like every 10 seconds. Like I just want to do things quick. And for me, that all comes down to having a better user experience.
Like it a lot. I think it's genius. Um, I want to find out, you know, um, besides investing, besides finance, like, AI has come in, has been around for 120, 140 years, right? At least the discussion of it has been around for that long. It comes in waves of every 20 years, and then it stops and then it goes back and then it talk about it again, then you stop. And then now it seems to have historically more momentum now than it's ever had before, right? So, what do you see as the future of AI infrastructure? It looks like it's got legs now. So, how do you see, in addition to the finance, what do you see possible?
Yeah, I do think for the AI, like not only AI infrastructure, right? So but the whole AI industry, there's a two key thing. One is definitely we're still in the early stage of growth. Um, before ChatGPT was out, the reason why we had a term called ChatGPT moment, where we get a historical number of people signing up to use ChatGPT on OpenAI's website. Um, the reason because of that was before it was launched, we had no idea that AI could be that powerful. Like imagine all those customer service chatbots that you were using, talking to online for your customer service when something goes wrong. They always give you the same answer, like irrelevant, really dumb answer. They was like,
what are you saying? And also all those like user menu, click, 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 click. But after ChatGPT launched, right, we realized, oh, the machine can actually think. Like we actually hearing like intelligence these days, right? So that's a very important thing. And afterwards, in the past like 2 3 years, there's a long debate between like open and closed, like open source versus closed source. We saw a lot of efforts by different giants in the market that just pushing for like open source of the development there. They have their own benefits in terms of how they develop. I don't comment on the both, but I do see that innovation are being driven over the past 2 years for all the competition on the model's intelligence, on the model's performance, on the like AI infrastructure changes there. And the second thing about AI infrastructure, the future I'm seeing is decentralization. Decentralization in the means that before ChatGPT was launched, the most common cloud that we are using globally, mainly three, right? GCP by Google, Microsoft Azure, and also Amazon AWS. But then after AI was launched, there are actually more specific cloud infrastructure being spun up just to meet the AI needs. There are more local, regionalized cloud companies that is coming to provide more specific services to the companies there. The reason behind is to actually surface these AI models, they sometimes in production grade, they require quite a high performance and also low latency, meaning you don't expect the machines to actually give you a response like after a minute. They want fast responses to have better UX. So in that case, the cloud has to be closer to where the company is based in order to provide the best experience. For example, if that's a cloud company in the States versus a cloud company in Asia, for an Asian company, definitely no doubt he would go for the Asian cloud to get the best experience for the AI models and AI services there. So there will be more and more cloud companies coming up in a more decentralized manner, countering against like always seeing the top three cloud dominance in the market in terms of how they service the AI, how they service the compute. So this is very good because it allows for a whole decentralization of more localized cloud, more infrastructure to be built, so that who get benefited in the end is you and I. Like we are the consumers, we get benefited. A quick number that I can give you for references. I think a year ago, like if you actually run a GPU on AWS, let's say H100 GPU, which was at that time one of the more top tier ones, state of the art GPU, it requires $10 per hour on AWS, and then versus on a more smaller up and coming growing cloud company, they're only offering you like $3. So there's a huge gap in between the cost and between like the cost of using GPU, using computation power. And what benefits it can give is with cheaper cost, with cheaper hosting of these AI models or even training of the AI models, we as consumers can actually get more performant AI services, smarter AI applications, even more specific domain can actually be benefited. They can actually train the models with a lot of cost, right? So we have been hearing about OpenAI using $1 million to train the ChatGPT 4.0, and a lot more newer like models require less money. Part of that is because we have a lot more GPUs at a cheaper cost or at a more available to them to be used. So a lot more reasons, and even on the model side, there's more advancements to the model improvements there. So in the future, I do see that AI infrastructure having an exponential growth, and also there will be more and more decentralized than what we're seeing these days.
God, I'm glad you mentioned that, the energy efficiency. Sometimes I forget about that because there's still this narrative out there that Bitcoin's bad for the environment. It's awful. It takes up so much use. And I'm like, well, Amazon, data centers actually pollute the environment more. But why? Why do we continue to have a mission of energy efficiency, and why is that important? And how can mining and Cysic help create that efficiency?
Okay, yeah. So there's so like probably like something outside of the question here is like So like in the past years, I also acted as a VC, like somehow in crypto. Like when we want to evaluate like mining project is like not the innovative or tech side to evaluate. We do it more on the energy side. We want to make sure the mining facility, they have a very low electricity bill. Like probably their electricity bill is much lower than the ones in Texas or like Ohio something. Yeah, so that's the most important part. And other than that, like we don't care too much. Yeah, so for Cysic, so the energy efficiency is like very important. We don't want to draw too much criticism. Yeah, since we are like manufacturing say like some ZK ASICs, probably like also some mining rigs in the future. We don't want to draw a lot of criticism and to say like we're polluting the environment. Yeah, we are just consuming like too much power to do some like cryptocurrency mining. Yeah, there are like various ways to solve these issues. Like as you know, there's like one way, like it's all about the cooling of the machine. Like the machine, like if you just use a fan to cool the machine, then probably like it will be like very high energy consuming. But if you use some like liquid or like a water to cool the machine, then it will be like much probably like not that energy consuming on that. So that's like one perspective we are right now exploring. And second, we are only talking about like these like professional machines which are like in the IDCs or in the mining facility. It's like a very loud, very hot space. But there is like one possibility is where it's like we can create a home-based one. And this like home-based one can be like very quiet and probably like just the energy efficiency or energy requirement is at the same on a par with your coffee machine. So it's running there, it's like generating this revenue, and yeah, so it's just about like say this, like for instance, like you forgot to turn off your ACs in your room like for one day, probably that's the energy requirement for like 1 month of the machine. Yeah, so that's something like we are going to achieve, and something we have already achieved for the home-based one. Yeah, so we have like two, like for the ZK hardware product, we have like two we have two hardware products. The first one we call it ZK Air, which is portable. It's the size of a MacBook charger. Yeah, so you can carry it around with you, and you just plug that into your computer or in your cell phone, and then you can generate ZK proof on that. Yeah, so it's a very lightweight, energy efficient machine. And of course, we have some like promotions for the pros. Yeah, yeah. So there are like various ways we can address the issue.
I like the handheld one. You compare that
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's good.